Well. Another Yu-Gi-Oh hater at it again. A big ass 10 million sub account shitting on the game that I've irrevocably tied my finances to. Well, you all know how we do here. Sleeve up your Chaos Gustav Sea Rider Dragons. It's time to act man again.
Honestly, the only part I really enjoyed was getting my Blue Eyes White Dragon, because at least he looks cool.
Uh-oh. So if you're watching this, you've probably already watched this video. I played Yu-Gi-Oh to prove it's ridiculous, and first off, look at that thumb. I'm a fucking amateur, man. Man's got similar subs to me. He's getting custom thumbs. I'm out here pulling thumbs out of my asshole. Wait. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar with Raran, he's a Hearthstone guy, which is frightening. See, this isn't some, like, general gaming YouTuber. This is a person who plays card games for a living, and like us, he plays a card game that peaked a long time ago, while just sort of fanning the embers on the game we play until we can pay off our mortgage. Raran recently played about 5 hours of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just to see what it was like, and it did not go well. After getting his ass kicked for about the length of one Barbieheimer, he called it, but not before calling out the game we all know and love. His arguments were basically this. Disclosure! I'm kind of distilling his arguments here for the purposes of pacing. I know they're nuanced. We're trying to get out of here tonight, all right? 1. Yu-Gi-Oh's got the worst new player experience of all time. 2. Yu-Gi-Oh's insanely complicated in a way that turns off potential new players. And 3. The core gameplay loop of Yu-Gi-Oh often isn't fun. And, oh, this is a far cry from 4 kids censored too many boobays. All right, let's do our best to kind of go through them. He's completely right. Through Rayren's example, let's look at what the new player experience for Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually looks like. The first thing you do is download Master Duel and jump right in. So far, so good. The second is you do the tutorials, and immediately we have a problem. Old Rari is right on point when he explains the gameplay he experiences as a result of the tutorial is not analogous to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game that has been played this decade. Sure, at some point you have to be taught the basics, things like what a normal summon is, how you can set individual monster cards, how you go to the battle phase and individual monsters compare their attack stats with each other. That's all part of the core gameplay loop, for sure. But nothing in the tutorial imparts to you that you are going to be playing at Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 speeds. That the true goal of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is to combo your opponent into the wall so hard that they do not get a chance to play the game. And in doing so, you might take upwards of a 15-minute turn. Instead, it sells you on this premise of like, oh, Gemini Elf has more attack points than La Jin, so be careful if you put La Jin in your deck. At best, that's going to lead to a lot of disappointed players who either feel they got their time stolen by a tutorial that ended up not really mattering, or they're going to be disappointed because they wanted to play that style of game and it just doesn't exist anymore. Or alternatively, players are just going to thumb back in the tutorial like it's the Atla manuscript. Like, where's the rest of it? What's a link summon? You know? They know what a link summon is. What's a U-link? You know? Frustrated at this, Mr. Rand jumps into casual mode. Casual mode, where you'd expect the casuals are. Instead, he basically gets his ass beat the entire time. A bunch of individuals tell him that maybe he should consider playing the single player modes, which is like a decent idea, but it's also a bit of a mixed bag, right? There's like a 99% chance playing the single player mode means you're just learning the basic setup for a deck that you're never going to see again. And ideally, you'd like to, play the game against another human sometime in the first dozen hours of opening a new product. Finally, the chatters throw in the towel and start recommending that he get another YouTuber to show him the ropes, or maybe someone who's played the game before to walk him through what he needs to be doing. Ran Ranch describes this as coaching, which is an interesting way of looking at it. I'd always just assumed that having a guide on your Yu-Gi-Oh! Journey was the only way you could get into the game. But from a layman's perspective, it really is coaching to a degree. Why should you have to contact a third party to play a video game online? You don't need to pause Deltarune to figure out how to attack. They tell you in the game. So what does he end up doing? He plays Dragon Maid, and functionally just clicks buttons for 20 or 30 minutes. Later, he graduates to Salamangreat by purchasing one of the precon decks, and later still, someone sends him a competitive Salamangreat list which he crafts. Which brings us to 2. Yu-Gi-Oh's insanely complicated in a way that turns off new players. Why are we lying about this? A significant amount of the arguments in that Act Man video that I peed my pants about were functionally just that Yu-Gi-Oh is too hard. There are some things that I think are quite simple about Yu-Gi-Oh that for some reason old players can't get the grasp on. Xyz summoning and the like I feel is very intuitive. But importantly, in that video I did agree with and continue to agree with the concept that Yu-Gi-Oh is a really, really complicated game. I think we can all be realistic about it. I don't think we need to pretend that it's easy to learn. I took the piss out of that video we watched on stream in which someone says it's no more difficult to learn Yu-Gi-Oh! Than it is to learn Magic or Pokemon. And I think Hidden Valley Ranch's video is a pretty good example of the fact that that is completely wrong. It's just super wrong. Magic the Gathering has a multitude of different mechanisms by which you can learn the game. Arena has a comprehensive tutorial. A significant amount of the formats are low investment and low power. Drafting gets you integrated into the game with literally no collection. Standard is one of the most popular ways to play the game and is not complex by design. And that's to say nothing about the introductory track to a game like Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra, which will just get you an understanding of the game in under 2 hours. Now, at the highest echelons of games like Magic the Gathering, there is a lot of complexity to be had. For instance, in Modern, there's a quadrillion different keywords that you're not going to remember on first glance. But unlike Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh's complexity is functionally just the same thing over and over, and it's insanely long cards that you have to intuit what they are going to do from a baseline knowledge of nothing. There's a part in the video that I think is pretty illustrative. RarXD plays against a Rika deck and hasn't opened any hand traps. I think he might not have been playing any hand traps. He might not know what a hand trap is. It's like his first day playing Yu-Gi-Oh! His opponent normal summons a Rika Petal, and he is frantically scrolling through the text on that card while trying to figure out what it means that they are about to add a Rika card from their deck to their hand. They get Con, and imagine your first ranked experience being trying to navigate what it means to tribute an opponent's monster to pay the cost of an effect you are activating. Because he's open no interaction, his opponent proceeds to combo off for, no joke, 10 or 15 minutes, at which point functionally he just dies instantly. There's a difference between the complexity in something like assembling a doomsday pile in Legacy and the complexity that is, you are now going to have to speed read 900 words, and your comprehension better be out of this fucking world. Even in games with a lot of hidden information like Magic the Gathering, they've built into the game a way you can intuit from a knowledge base of almost zero what your opponent might be up to. If they're on blue, you can expect there might be counter spells in the deck. If they're on black, there's probably some spot removal. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, encountering a card like Branded Fusion for the first time is going to take you about 90 seconds to read the card, and then 15 minutes to try and figure out what the hell your opponent is setting up. The end result, if you're a new player playing by yourself on a ladder system, is that you lose. You lose constantly. You lose to good decks, you lose to bad decks, you lose to everything in between, and in the meantime, you read about as many words as Homestuck. Be real. There's a period where, after reading the 9th flower card and your opponent has activated that turn, you just stop. Something in your brain clicks and you say, all right, I have no further interaction, do what you must, I will trust you are not cheating. No card game should have a moment where one of the players decides they are done playing before they've had a turn. And certainly that moment should not happen every game. Which brings me to... So Rare and Ago doesn't actually ever say that Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't fun. But it's pretty clear that he thinks it. The entire time he's just checked all the way out, upset at how the game is playing out and what he has to do to even engage with it. People in chat start saying absolutely insane shit. Maybe you're not the right type of person for Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe you don't have the attention span necessary for it. The guy has been playing it for about 5 hours straight. He's devoted a pretty significant amount of time to the game. He's frustrated that even at this position, he can't engage with it at all. But even in a best-case scenario where the light of divination shines upon Raran, he might just not like the game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is incredibly zero-sum. He starts to figure this out over the course of the video, saying things like, I need to be going first so I can prevent my opponent from playing. A significant amount of playing this game is ensuring that one player at the table is having absolutely no fun whatsoever. It's a skill-based game for sure, but a significant amount of that skill is expressed in a way that prevents your opponent from ever accessing their reserves of understanding. And that sucks, right? Thinking that this game uniquely has a learning cliff that other card games have already figured out a way to manage. We refuse to do so, and the end result is a game that frequently just straight up looks like solitaire. I think that the paper card game has done a uniquely good job of beating back this type of criticism in recent years, stopping the design decisions that dominated the back half of the 10s and the early part of the COVID era. I think decks like Sprite and Tearlament and IKEA Lab and individual cards like Fenrir and Triple Tack and Thrust have done an amazing job at giving players options going both first and second and the potential to be playing pretty much that entire time. But unless a new player is lucky enough to have have picked one of those 3 decks out of a hat, they're going to probably be playing a deck that's main game plan is to prevent your opponent from ever drawing a card that could conceivably threaten them. And that sucks. This type of video does worry me, and as Master Duel has become more and more popular, these videos have become more and more frequent. Big name streamers are trying out Yu-Gi-Oh! Excited to play the game that they remember from their childhood, summoning the Blue Eyes White Dragon and the Dark Magician, only to be told that that kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! Never really existed outside of the playground. That would be a compelling pitch if we could follow it up with, but there is a super cool balls-to-the-wall combo battlecruiser magic-style gameplay that's replaced it that's infinitely more fun. Instead, we frequently get to respond with, now there's this card in the game called Maxi that if you activate, you win immediately. Where's it come from? Oh, the hand. You can't interact with it. In short, we've got a problem. It's the same problem that they're identifying in Konami board meetings now. New players are just not coming in as much as we'd like. We've got far and away the sleekest client to play our game and a really generous monetization model, and people just aren't willing to hammer it out. As a community, we have to stop lying to ourselves about issues of complexity. The difficulty in parsing this game as a new player is something that people are increasingly unwilling to rankle with. There's a comment on Farfa's response to this video where someone says something along the lines of, oh, well, yes, Yu-Gi-Oh's difficult, but it sucks that he started with Dragon Maid and Salamangreat. Those are 2 of the most complicated decks in the game, which is just not remotely true. I wouldn't put either of them in the top 100. But if those decks, our baseline decks, are considered too complex, maybe something went wrong so long ago, we don't have a chance to change it anymore. Finally, I think this year has really just been our come to Hortaki moment, right? Master Duel was a blessing in that it exposed the game to more people than ever before, but it also shone a light directly on the fact that the player base is increasingly a group of people who play because they got in on the ground floor in 2002. And that's why I came away from this video just a little bit disappointed. It sucks to see someone who loves card games as much as Rastafarian turned off from what is, in my opinion, the best one, because the new player experience is dismal and the cards are way too complex for any mortal person to comprehend at first glance. These types of people should be our bread and butter. Individuals who are really integrated into thinking about card games, using their systems, and excited to try new ones. But instead, we're caught between a rock and a hard place. We can't seem to grab the YUGIBOOMERs because their concerns range from incomprehensible to why the Blue Eyes White Dragon no win, and we can't grab potential new competitive players because the game sucks for about a year. Man, feels weird to just come out swinging against Actman and then functionally agree with this YouTuber for 20 minutes. Let me see if I can find one of his opinions that I can disagree with. About 3/4 of the way through the video, he says something while his opponent is in minute 9 of comboing off to the degree of, this is why every other card game has a resource system. I can work with that. Okay, first, what he means here is exactly mana. There are resources in Yu-Gi-Oh! They're just not mana. They're things like cards in hand. They're hard ones per turn. There's zones sometimes. But I think the assumption that all card games need effectively a mana system comes from the fact that all card games have a common ancestor in Magic the Gathering. I think there's very much a way that a game without mana could be very cool. The other one of the big 3, Pokemon, lets you take 1 billion actions per turn. There's like energy, but there's 1 million cards that let you cheat the energy limit. So yeah, take that. Be more imaginative. We must envision a world in which there doesn't need to be a land. All right, that's all I got. I know a lot of people in the comments are going to be like, oh, you should team up with Rat Race and show him how to play the card game. But like, doesn't that prove his point? The only way you can get into the game is if someone who's played it for 21 years teaches you how to link summon a Salamangreat. Ideally, we shouldn't have to fly Simo out every time someone wants to learn how to play the card game.